This week in the security news, Minecraft on your light bulb, Sonicwall is breached, who's next? Ditch Android, install Linux, hacking your face, thermostat freedom, pen test fails, HackRF hacking ×2, going around EDR, hacking your printer, Chinese data breach, NFC relays, and PCI, constructive construction hacks, FlipperZero firmware updates, ICS, PLCs, and attacks, Bayesian Swiss cheese. Does it taste good or not? Do you want to hack back, keeping secrets, enforcing CMMC? OWASP Top 10 gets a makeover. Android spyware makes a landfall. Gemini's deep research into your documents. Slopguard and AI data centers in space. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software, deployment, and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter, METER. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. ThreatLocker's zero trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots, just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. Coming to you live from Hacker Syndicate Studios, this is Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 900, being recorded on Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian, joined by Mr. Larry Pesce, remotely. Larry, welcome.
Yeah, remotely, because I had to teach remotely for SANS today.
Yep, after a lot of travel.
Yep, but I wanted to be here because it is, in fact, a very special episode.
It is.
900.
Round number. That's right. Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us. Jeff, welcome.
I, too, am remote and wanted to be here for this very special episode 900. And I'm curious, Paul or Larry, does episode 1 exist anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
And is it in the show notes?
Oh, we'll talk about that in a moment. Let me get to I guess I do
a
want to
no.
talk about that. Mr. Lee Neely is here with us.
And it's great to be here. I wouldn't miss it. Although if that interest, all I could think of was pigs in space.
That's right. Mr. Sam Bound is here with us.
Good evening. Glad to be with you.
Feeling blue but still optimistic, Miss Mandy Logan is here with us. Mandy, welcome.
That's right. This is way more crystal blue persuasion.
That's right.
Feeling blue, right? Although I just realized, I also have my ThreatLocker mug. It's a lot of blue.
Oh, nice.
Right here.
Yes, very nice. Yeah, so it is 900. Episode 1 was a long time ago now, actually, just over 20 years ago, when Larry, myself, and a few other people recorded episode 1 in Los Angeles. Episode 2, we did like an interview with Marty Resch. That's the famous story where the audio engineer was like, I couldn't hear anything, so I'd take off my headphones, and the audio was rough in the beginning, especially. It was rough. Larry, you're on mute.
He is
You're
on mute.
Yeah, it's muted on Riverside, which is, which is funny. We used to do this all live in studio in the early days with actual microphones, no live streaming, no video. We just recorded audio. And look how far we've come.
Yeah, crazy.
It's crazy. 900 episodes feels like a lot.
So does episode 1 exist? To Jeff's
does.
question.
Yes, still in the feed. All 900 episodes are in the feed. We did like special editions and stuff, so there's actually more than 900. But yeah,
But is it in the show notes?
no.
Back then we didn't do show notes.
Yeah, because show notes. I mean, don't forget we're talking 20 years ago, so we've been through quite a few web hosting platforms in 20 years. I'm not sure how much of the content actually has survived, but the MP3 files are in the audio feed. I don't think we've done any audio feed consolidation. So you can, if you want, you can go listen to episode 1. I don't know
And
how relevant
episode
it would be. Yeah, in
And
episode
2.
So you can do that if you want, or you can listen to this episode where we talk about the latest happenings. But don't forget, now you can join us live every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Live streaming links can be found on our Discord server. So you can go to securityweekly.com/Discord. That's the invite, and it'll get you on the Discord server, and you can tune in live by the wonders of technology.
Mm-hmm. But some programming notes that we have some holidays coming up that kind of interfere with some of that. So some of the shows in the next month or so might not necessarily be live.
That's true. We're going to do some pre-recording of tech segments and interviews, I believe, is the plan. So if you'd like to do an interview or want to see an interview, let us know.
Yep, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's are all ones that are potentially impacted by this.
Yep. All righty. I wanted to start with the story that both Jeff and I had on the Sonicwall breach. I thought this breach was particularly interesting because F5 has suffered a breach, Sonicwall suffered a breach. I believe earlier in the year, Cisco suffered a breach similar to Sonicwall. I want to say it was customer data or something like that. And like I was looking for like this like rule of threes where I could pull 3 different events and call that a trend. And my concern is that while threat actors are now hyper-focused on going after edge devices, not only that, they're also focused on going after the manufacturers that make said edge devices to gain even more of an upper hand. We also got reports from Amazon Threat Intelligence this week that 6 months ago or longer, Amazon observed Cisco ICE and Citrix NetScaler vulnerabilities being exploited while there were still 0 days. So before those 2 CVEs were publicly disclosed, Amazon went back in their honeypot and went, wait a minute, we see threat actors exploiting those long before that was made public. And so that's just even one data point to show where the attacker focus is today. I could be living in like my own bubble, my own tunnel vision, but I think there's trends here. And I'm concerned that now threat actors are like, well, we can gain an upper hand if we just go after F5 and we lived in their network for a year and collected all kinds of stuff. And this is a dangerous trend, I think, as edge devices still largely remain on the internet and to a certain extent unprotected still. And that's why attackers are going after them for one reason. So Jeff, I don't know if you had any other insights in the Sonicwall breach.
Not a whole lot. I mean, what struck me was the blaming nation state sponsored hackers, which historically has been just sort of who can protect against that? But I don't think that argument kind of stands anymore. I also added the article since apparently there were link issues with yours that were fixed.
Yes,
but just in case.
Yeah, I mean, on the positive side, Sonicwall did provide remediation steps, things you could do to really go through your router on this one. After this.
Also like don't store your configuration in the cloud either, because I think that was
what
the
can go
data
wrong?
breach, right? Was when your backups go into the cloud. Although, like I'm now the pot calling the kettle black because I want to say with Ubiquiti and Unify, your stuff is in the cloud. Well, it can be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the easier way to do it, certainly.
Right. Well, the question is, how is it protected in the cloud? For example, I have a cloud backup service that I can set my own encryption key. The downside is then they can't decrypt it if anything goes wrong.
Right. And we all know encryption is usually not broken, but someone leaks a key or the implementation goes wrong, and then attackers have access to it.
Yeah. In this case, but I've got the exception where I know that the encryption here is good. But still, I guess, do anything you can to tip the deck in your favor, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a whole thing, like how much you want to take on all by yourself and how much you have to rely on third parties. And so you rely on a third party like Sonicwall, who makes great stuff, by the way. But everyone's susceptible to a breach or some kind of vulnerability. And that's now outside of your control. But would it be any better if you did everything yourself? That's for sure.
Well, the question that your 25-year-old self would give versus present day self would give is very different.
It's true. 25-year-old Paul was like, let's build everything open source and use all open source.
And 25-year-old Paul probably didn't need sleep, wasn't married, and didn't have kids.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, we can do this, right? But then, you mature, you gain experience, knowledge, and you're like, oh, now we talk about what are we going to bring in-house and do ourselves, and what are we going to outsource, knowing that we can't do everything ourselves, knowing that we probably shouldn't outsource everything either, that there are critical things to the business that we need to maintain more control over.
And there's one more thing that present day self and all this group does that we didn't do when we were in our 20s. Phone a friend. Seek expert advice.
Well, and then the danger with open source is the open source software supply chain has never been breached, right? I mean, actually, there's probably at least an article or two every week about some incident in the open source supply chain. So we're screwed either way. Either way, we've got to do something to secure ourselves. Yeah. Mandy.
I have a quick question on this. Under how firewall management gaps expose Linux systems, when it says metadata from rule comments may identify Linux distributions, kernel versions, or management tools, on that, when it's talking about the rule comments may identify, is that because, wouldn't you need multiple sources to verify if you're trying to just figure out what distro or kernel version is being used? Wouldn't that only be kind of a maybe?
Yeah, I think it is a maybe, and I think it's as these firewalls become enterprise gateway appliances, they do more than just allow or deny traffic. They also inspect traffic. They also keep a log of that inspected traffic. And so Ubiquiti is a great example. I put the new cloud firewall in my house. I think Larry did a similar thing recently. And you can log into the interface, and because it's your gateway, it is identifying all the stuff on your network. So if someone were to compromise my Ubiquiti account, they could log in. They could basically not only just see everything on my network, but see I've got this many Linux systems of this version. I've got these iPhones and they're this version. And your firewall, which traditionally was just a packet inspection, blocking, allowing device, now has this intelligence about your network. I think Sonicwall is similar to Ubiquiti in that nature, if I can draw a parallel between the two, which is super handy, by the way. So I can log into my Ubiquiti and go, oh, what is that? It helps with security because I can go, wait, why is that on my network? Right? Because it's all the access points. It's all in my firewall all in one. I log in and go, well, that one's associated to this access point. What is that? Why is that? So it's a double-edged sword. But then again, if an attacker gets that data, they've now got not just a map of your network, but they know about the devices. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's if they're... It seems like a complex way if you're just going after one individual. I don't know. That seems huge, but...
Yeah.
Right.
So, and this was a breach of the back end too, which, I mean, we could say, well, I suggest there needs to be encryption involved to encrypt customer data. We always say multi-factor authentication, but if I'm using multi-factor authentication to get into my Ubiquiti account, but Ubiquiti has a breach on the back end, then that's kind of meaningless at that point, which is probably why the attackers are like, what if we breach the back end? Then we don't have to worry about all those other security controls.
We were talking about this. I'm remembering when the first time we were doing an internal, we didn't even call it pen test then. And the internal group got some of my servers, and it was one of these Solaris 11 keystrokes because of an LD, the dynamic loader vulnerability that would get you root.
Yep.
And how pissed I got. But it was a lesson learned. Is there anything, I'm just thinking, how valuable is it anymore to have gone through preferably an internal breach in terms of getting people in the right mindset to think about these kinds of things.
Yeah, I think it's a call to these vendors that they themselves have to be more secure than they are today, that they have to do the due diligence to protect their customers, protect their products, protect the supply chain, protect customer data. Because now this is like I said, like the third breach.
Right.
And, I hate to suggest that we should play the whack-a-mole thing and be like, oh, well, attackers are going here, so we need to shore up, those defenses over there and like forget about everything else.
Yeah,
right?
You gotta have basic hygiene down.
Because then we're playing whack-a-mole, right?
Right.
And
you can't defend against, the Russians are doing this, so we should no, you got to go for the broad scope stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm actually surprised Jeff isn't jumping in.
Cough medicine's working too well. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
A little slow.
Lee, I mean, isn't that kind of like a broad thing across industry and across human nature that if you've never been slapped, you don't give time.
You don't know
attention. Yeah, you don't care. So
yeah, it's your point is valid, and I don't have a fix. It's just I'm thinking, it blows when you get tipped. Whether it's an insider or an outsider, it's better when it's an insider. I don't mean insider threat. I mean a pen test team that's supposed to do it. Yeah, excuse me. And then it's a friendly, and it was. And oh, by the way, I had the guy show me what he did later. It was like, holy crap! That's
cool,
and
wow. I think there's somewhat of an over reliance on EDR, right? That's driving this. That I like my story number 16 that ties into this. This was a vulnerability on Canon printers that could be exploited if you printed a document with specially crafted text in it. Excuse me. So, but I love the opening statements. And this came from Kaspersky, I believe. Or did. And it says, these days, attackers probing an organization's infrastructure rarely come across the luxury of a workstation without an EDR agent. So malicious actors are focusing on compromising servers or various specialized devices connected to the network with fairly broad access privileges, yet lacking EDR protection and often logging capabilities. They said they've previously written about these. The attacks this year are focused on network devices such as VPNs, gateways, firewalls, routers, video surveillance systems, but printers shouldn't be overlooked either. What I find interesting about this statement that carries more weight is Kaspersky is an EDR antivirus company. And here they are saying, well, and I mean, it should be noted that it's kind of like a hat tip to the EDR vendors. One could say that, although I don't know that I would say this, but one could say that EDR vendors are doing such a great job at protecting systems that have an EDR agent that attackers are moving to systems without EDR agents, which I think is why the statement comes from a company like Kaspersky. I'm not knocking Kaspersky in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but I think that's where it's stemming from, right? And certainly the data is there. It's indicative. I think, Sam, you had a story last week for cyber insurers. It said breaches are stemming from VPN appliances. So there's multiple data points to point to this particular behavior. So is this a wake-up call? Do we now have to, I'm hoping, part of me hopes this is exploited in the wild and a printer is used in an actual attack or campaign so that we actually do start paying attention to vulnerabilities on our printer, which historically we have not paid attention to. It's one of those, what I call the dusty corners in IT.
Mm-hmm. And printer's just not a printer anymore either. It does so much more.
They said this one runs dry OS firmware. I've not looked at Canon printer firmware in a while. I think I dabbled a little while ago in some printer firmware. Mm-hmm. But again, you find a great vulnerability in printer firmware, which someone has, and people are like, yeah, it's a printer. Move on. Maybe I'll patch my printer, maybe I won't.
Well, I mean,
it always used to be that way, though.
It
didn't always used to be that way, though.
We cared about printers, you saying, Larry?
Yeah, you cared. Well, I mean, when was the last time you printed something?
This is true.
This morning?
Fair. But 15 years ago, we were printing a heck of a lot more because there's still a lot more reliance on paper. And we thought about what that reliance on paper was. There was all sorts of sensitive things that were being sent through printers that would be valuable to an attacker to recover. Mm-hmm. Also, as a pivot point into potentially other networks and so forth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm thinking there's like a lot of printers now have online print services where you can send a document to them and they'll hook up to it almost by default. But how many folks actually use that to print? Do you need it enabled? There's printers have storage. I mean, that's something we've been watching for years. But I don't know how many companies out there like think that they need to sanitize the hard drive of the printer before they turn it in. Because it has a lot of stuff, or not. I used hard drive because I'm old school, but the persistent storage in the printer.
Sure. I know that there have been attacks historically that have allowed the attackers to read the documents that are being scanned, printed, faxed through the multifunction devices. Mm-hmm. Printer's not a printer today. It's also, scanned, I guess, faxed too. I put that on social.
And the
medical industry is
faxes
still using fax machines.
You might have to explain what a fax is to some people.
Just a fax, dude.
I was not prepared for this.
Wikipedia says that DryOS is just used in their cameras and camcorders.
Interesting.
Well,
yeah, and it only shows models of PowerShot and EOS and stuff.
So I wonder if that core for Wikipedia is true, but these printers, which now include, say, scanners and imaging, are using that OS, which is optimized for image handling.
And if you're going to maintain your own operating system, you're going to use it in as many products as possible, right?
Bingo.
To save money. So
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, Mandy's not wrong. I could just see scope creep just because of the specialty of that OS.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I love Sony cameras and like different lenses now, and they all have firmware updates in various capacities and are updated in different ways. And I'm like, ooh, I should look at the firmware. And then I'm like, but what am I going to do if I find vulnerabilities in camera firmware? It's not all that like while the cameras do have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on them today. Mm-hmm. But obviously that's only in play if you're using the camera and it's on at the time. So
I found an old Bose speaker in a closet that we hadn't used, and it was a Bluetooth speaker, and it had a USB port on it. And then I went in the manual that came with it was useless. I went on the online manual and it says, "Oh, you hook that to a computer to update the firmware, basically."
Yep.
And I thought, well, okay, they got the capability, but I bet nobody does it.
Yeah, I know one of my lenses has a USB-C port on the lens specifically for updating firmware.
Yeah,
that's insanity.
Actually, no, there was another part where if I put it on my wireless network, I could do something and it would go ask about firmware updates. But I'm like, it's been in the closet for a lot of years. I don't know if I want to put it online right now.
Right. I had some carryovers from last week too. Mm-hmm. I meant to talk about, speaking of like weird devices, those dodgy Android TV boxes.
Yeah, I want to know about that.
Yeah, HackRF ran an article on it, and I thought this was interesting because I knew you could do this when I did some of my research, the air quotes research. I was validating other people's research on these dodgy Android TV boxes. It's definitely a great term for them. We've covered Bad Box, the malware strain before. Google's lawsuit against the creators of that malware and botnet. And this article talks about how certain models can run Debian. And I have one of these models. I think I researched it, but I didn't actually put Debian on it. But basically you go to a forum and someone has created an Armbian, which is a like ARM-based Debian distribution that you put on the SD card. And you can, I think you have to modify the bootloader to tell it to boot from the SD card, and it'll boot Linux on these devices. But it should come as no shock in these cheap Android devices that are sold on Amazon for sometimes as little as like $20 that they advertise higher CPU RAM and storage than what is actually in them. So it's false advertising. They say, hey, you're getting this processor with this much flash and this much RAM, and the folks that are like reversing them and looking at the devices are like, it doesn't have those specs. It has much less specs. Actually, it has half the RAM than what's advertised. I'm like, well, that's interesting. So these also include malware, as we've talked about historically. Yet, here's my soapbox moment. Amazon sells a ton of them, but they won't sell a FlipperZero because, it can be used to steal credit cards and steal your car. So FlipperZeros are a no-go. But vendors that we know are committing false advertising and distributing devices with malware on them, Amazon's like, no, that's fine. That's fine. Probably because Amazon's selling a ton of them. Maybe we did cover this last week. I don't remember.
Would somebody pass Paul some Amazon Kool-Aid, please?
I know, right? I'm low on my Brando. Isn't that the one in
Brando?
Low
Holy
on my
crap!
Brando.
When are we not going to be able to make the drink the Kool-Aid reference without everybody thinking we're old?
It has electrolytes in it. It's what plants crave. So
yeah. So no, I mean, I'm thinking about how many, not just like the cheap old Android devices like you're talking about here, but I'm thinking about like full on smart TVs that have the capability to hook up to a keyboard and there's your display. I'm thinking, boy, what the hell else could you do with them? And they've got old OSs in them too.
Yeah,
right?
they do. Most TVs have a customized Linux or Android that's on them.
Right.
Samsung has I forget what Samsung's OS is.
I look at my 8-year-old TV that I'm pretty sure isn't getting OS updates anymore, but it works perfectly as a TV.
Right.
And yeah, there's a Black Friday sale on a decent replacement at Costco right now, but the damn thing ain't broken.
Right. But it's got 8-year-old firmware on it that hasn't been updated and never will be updated because it's end of support.
Right. So,
and everyone's just running them and Wi-Fi connecting them because it's super convenient to go, oh, I just want like my Netflix app on my TV. So why I'm going to buy another device? My TV runs it fine. But then it never gets updated after a certain point in time.
So that's, and that's, I guess, not just TV, that's consumer electronics in general, isn't it?
Well, that's IoT. I think when it has updates, it's IoT. When updates stop, it's IOC or Internet of Crap. Or iOS, Internet of Shit, right? I think that should be the delineation. We should lose the IoT moniker and go to the iOS.
But you can still have Internet of Crap or Internet of Shit on device that still gives you updates.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
Well,
just much.
We can't fix garbage in, garbage out, Larry.
True.
But where's RenderMan when you need him?
Garbage versus garbage that can be updated versus not updated. It's still garbage.
Yeah. So.
I don't know, but Nicole messaged me just like an hour before the show. We were talking. So I'm guessing RenderMan is there.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Wow. So hardware hacking stuff. Invasion of the face changers. Halloween hijinks on Bluetooth LED. I've been meaning to cover this since I found it like the day after Halloween. But the researchers at Bishop Fox discovered that I don't know if you've ever seen the LED face changing masks that they sell. I actually have one, but it's not Bluetooth enabled. So that's what the mask look like. And mine just has buttons that you can change a bunch of like pre-canned images or animations on the mask. But the newer ones apparently use Bluetooth and pair to an app on your phone so that you can use your phone to select images, download new images.
Draw your own faces.
Yeah, I don't know if the app lets you upload custom ones or not, if that's built in. But researchers at Bishop Fox realized that the Bluetooth on these devices is not secure. And that anyone within Bluetooth range, with the appropriate knowledge that you can glean from this article, and there's a GitHub repository, can change. If you're in proximity, you can see it's downloading a new image right there, and you can change the image to an image of your choosing. Now, the Bishop Fox researchers uploaded the Bishop Fox logo, which is a neat trick. You can imagine with this code what people might put on there as an image.
Wieners.
Just, I'll let your imaginations run wild.
Wieners.
We did this with a backpack at one of the LED backpacks at DEF CON. this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah, so Paul, it turns out that there is some security to this, and the way they discovered it was through absolutely perfect techniques. They did some BT snooping on Android to discover the commands that were being sent to which services characteristics and descriptors to set the images and so forth. But of what happens with a lot of cases with Bluetooth Low Energy, because the security at Bluetooth Low Energy is so poor and often relies on default pins, they added some encryption layer higher up in the stack. But specifically, if you reverse engineer the mobile app, the encryption methodology and the static keys across every device are easily revealed. And it was AES one. It was an AES 128 key.
I gotcha.
Yep. So there was some security. Arguably not
very good. Not very well implemented is a better way to put it, Larry.
Well implemented, not well protected.
Yes, right.
Yep. You're not saying default password? Default key?
Pretty much, yeah. Default key. Yep.
An easily discoverable secret, right? And that's usually where encryption falls down. Is
an easily discoverable, hard-coded secret.
When the secret is not so secret is where things fall down.
Yeah.
With encryption in general, right, Jeff? I mean, pretty much across the board, regardless of what type of encryption we're talking about, for the most part, the secret not being secret is a problem.
You are absolutely correct on that, Paul.
Also, if you, Larry, I thought you would appreciate this one because we've talked about it on the show before. And this stems from your story that you covered from the bug bounty, the crowdsourced bug bounty.
Yeah.
I forget what that was called.
It was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but in the crowdsourced bug bounty, they had the original, I think, version 1 and version 2 Nest thermostats.
Yep.
They had a bounty on them because they stopped working because they turned off the servers on the back end of Google to receive the communications from these thermostats. And that was Fulu. Yeah, Fulu.org. Yep. And because I was like, I hope this person got the bounty for this, which it sounds like they did because they reference it in the acknowledgments.
Awesome.
And so, but they describe how they did it. They reference so they built upon previous work of people trying to, it looks like, unlock the bootloader, map the bootloaders so that you could customize the firmware. I'm not sure exactly what went into unlocking the bootloader on these devices, but I would imagine there had to be some kind of unlocking so that it could run new firmware or modified firmware. And this person was able to modify the firmware. So rather than phoning home to Google, it phones home to this person's website, which is kind of like I love this research. I love what the person did, but I would love it if they were release the code so I can stand up my own backend and program my thermostats to contact my own backend so I can control the entire cycle. But in this firmware modification, it contacts this person's website, which is called nolongerevil.com, which is pretty funny. And also awesome they have this domain. And so you have to register for an account. And then they claim we don't look at any of the data if you just register for an account with us at nolongerevil.com. Which, again, a little disappointing that, maybe I missed it. I don't think I did, but it would be nice if they released the back-end code so that we could basically have our own setup. But cool that they were able to allow people to still continue using their first and second generation Nest thermostats.
Nice. Now made with 100% less evil.
I thought Google was supposed to not be evil. Was that was just when they first...
Yep.
Yeah. They abandoned that and became evil.
Doesn't that happen? Actually, one of my AI bots was saying the other day, it was talking about organizational structures, and it said that there was no way to slow the creep of, it didn't say evil, but that's basically what it meant, with organizations.
Greed.
I'm wondering just how tight the security is on the Nest version 1 and 2. I mean, are they doing any certificate pinning, or could you use something like DNS mask to point it at your own server?
I'm sure you could.
Of course, you have to know how to talk back to it, but I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I'm sure you could reverse engineer the API yourself and stand up your own server. But this person, I think, has already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
And stands up there. Yeah. So, yeah, not impossible. You could probably do that yourself. I want to talk about PCI. I had a PCI moment, Jeff.
Holy cow!
I did. I want to talk about PCI.
I'm so proud of you, Paul.
I know.
And I may even have some comments in here too, Paul. But
yeah,
it's not
this
PCI
was
because it's RFID payment systems or contactless payment systems.
Where is that? See, now I'm going to get lost. Yeah. My story number 15, analysis of N-Gate malware campaign in NFC Relay. So N-Gate is an Android NFC relay kit used to cash out ATMs with the victim's own cards. It's delivered via a phishing attack plus a bank support call that pressures the user to install an app, tap the card on the phone, and then enter the PIN. The app runs in reader mode, captures the EMV ADDUs and the PIN, then exfiltrates them via simple TCP protocol with a backed C2. And then the same family also ships payment category, enabling an emitter role on the ATM. Configuration is stored as an XOR encrypted asset, and the key is derived from the APK signing cert, which in this sample resolves to a live plaintext C2. Bottom line, once the card is tapped and the PIN is entered, the attacker can relay the session and withdraw cash. But the whole attack premise is right there in the beginning, is that you have to trick the user into installing a malicious app that then taps the card and intercepts the payment information. There's a lot of technical detail in there, but that's basically the premise of it.
Well, there's a lot of technical detail, and it also had, if I recall from the article, they have a support helpline or whatever that you call or they call you. So you're actually talking in theory to a person that, for most people, that's going to up the trust level that, okay, this must be legit.
Right.
So what's your PCI question?
So is this covered in PCI anywhere, or this is just like an external attack? There's not much you can do about it as a payment card processor, right? Or as a merchant or as a payment card entity, right?
Well,
can you?
The short answer to your question is no. There's not really much in the PCI data security standard itself. There are other standards related to running mobile payments on a mobile device, running service provider, third-party type apps, basically on mobile devices. So, there's standards out there that will attempt to address doing things, but this one was a little bit different because this one wasn't really strictly involved in payment processing. There was no purchase. It was tricking you into, validating your debit card is working. So the
malicious apps aren't PCI certified. Right? They're not going.
Well, they're
PCI
not, but they're not. But if I read the article correctly, they weren't trying to fool people into before you're making a payment to purchase something. They were saying, "Hey, we need to, something went wrong. We need to fix the problem so that you're able to use this in the future for payment purchase." And so it kind of falls into that. Yeah. How do you protect? How does anybody or anything protect against this? Because it's a really kind of clever, and I hate to use the word sophisticated, maybe audacious type of social engineering attack.
Right.
Very targeted, very specific, but there's nothing in the PCI standard that would prevent this, unfortunately.
So they basically created a malicious app that mimics a transaction, that mimics you tapping your card at a merchant.
Well, again, I thought it was more like
like a validation.
It was more of an ATM function, I thought, and not a purchase function.
I gotcha.
And Larry could probably go into the details better than I can, but the payment processing for a credit card transaction and processing a debit card, two different, completely separate, different data flows, protocols, and everything.
And it's really your PIN that protects that process.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was kind of over when you gave up your PIN and they're capturing your PIN.
Yep, I gotcha. Larry, did you have thoughts on that one?
I mean, overall on the story, not specifically Jeff's comment, but one, I thought the attack was pretty neat, and we've been talking about this one in the wireless class with tool NFC Gate, which I originally thought was the tool you were referring, but it's N-Gate.
N-Gate, yeah.
N-Gate. So it's a little different. It's the same, but different.
Right.
NFC Gate was a little bit on the older side and was basically doing the same thing, except NFC Gate was capturing data at a terminal, at a compromised terminal, and then relaying it to another device that was, then just basically replaying that request.
I think I remember that one. Yep.
This
one's almost like the same thing, but just doing it through an app on your phone.
Right. And it was an app on the phone with NFC Gate, but you had to have specific versions of Android hardware and Android operating systems for it to work.
Right.
It apparently now works on even NFC Gate because I looked it up while I was waiting before the show, and apparently NFC Gate was updated within the last couple of months to support apparently newer hardware with some additional backend libraries that are basically modifying the libraries that Android neutered to prevent these types of attacks to happen. So, neat. What's old is new again.
Yeah, but does this work in the Apple ecosystem, or is this Android only?
The capture, so the relay is Android only, but on like something like NFC Gate, you're capturing the user providing their phone, their card to the payment terminal. So you're effectively masquerading as the payment terminal or capturing that in real time to the payment terminal. So Android is the app which is doing the capture and relay. I would assume that if you're paying tap to pay with your iPhone, it would make a difference.
Right.
But isn't the question you're asking, Paul, is how does one introduce a bad app into the Android ecosystem versus the Apple ecosystem? Play Store, I guess it's called.
Yeah. I mean, you can basically just, in Android, you can just sideload it and run it anyway, which they're talking about getting rid of in future Android versions, probably because of attacks like this. Where in iPhone land, you got to jailbreak it, right?
Yep.
But on Android, I can go, hey, just download this APK and run it. And it goes, no. You shouldn't do that. And I go, yes, do it anyway. And it goes, okay, I'll install it.
Yep.
That's the DJI app for my gimbal is that. And I always put it on an Android phone with nothing on it. And that's what I use my gimbal with. Because I don't want it on my regular Android phone. Because I'm like, there's a reason why you're not in the Google Play Store and I have to sideload this app. It's because you're spying on me.
Oh, actually, I thought it was because DJI was banned for sale in the U.S.
That too. I guess I'm speculating that they're spying. I have no evidence that the app is spying on me, but I haven't reverse engineered it.
Aren't all the apps spying on all of us?
To a certain degree, yes. That was part of the controversy, right, with TikTok was, well, it's collecting all this data. And it's like, well, a lot of apps collect data about you. Like you click agree and continue. And it's like, yep, I can collect all your information. You just gave me permission.
Yep. Like something like Facebook, for example.
Yep.
For instance. Let me give you a for instance.
Which is why Jeff put one link to a Facebook story in his stories. And also what I hear from Paul is more that he's just like has a hankering for some good old-fashioned stalking. You're just not getting stalked enough is what you're saying.
I know. I need to be stalked. This is why I install apps from DJI, because I want to be stalked. I need attention.
There are better ways, Paul. There are better ways.
Better ways, certainly.
Yep.
Oh, but Jeff, you had a story from Facebook that I started to read, and then I wasn't logged into Facebook.
Yeah, I just read that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So your story number 3 says, for 40 years, this woman kept a secret so classified that not even her husband knew. Now I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it was just more of a human interest, kind of a fun story because it's related to crypto and the Enigma machine. And basically, this woman, when she was young in World War II, she was one of the, don't
the
remember what the
waves,
exact title was.
Yeah, she was.
Well, something like a wave. She was a
There was a
woman that
book.
was enlisted to do a lot of the processing of communication traffic that was coming in encrypted by Enigma. And of course, she was sworn to secrecy until the day she died. So she kept it a secret. She never told anybody what she did. But day after day after day during World War II, she's breaking the communications, running it through the systems, realizing
Was it Code Girls? Was that the book? Code Girls?
I think Code Girls mentions it. Yeah.
Yep.
But she didn't find out until the late 90s that the whole Enigma thing had been declassified. So she's like, I guess I can talk about it. So she spent the rest of her life talking about it.
Yeah.
I just thought that was kind of cool.
Mhm.
And she only died in the last
She
year
died
or
in
so.
March 2nd.
She-
She was 104.
104 years old.
Wow.
Last
So-
of the code breakers, as it were.
Yep.
So I just thought it was kind of a neat story. And I thought I'd play with everybody's Facebook algorithms. I tried to find it's not on Facebook, and I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to put the Facebook.
Just
link
gonna
up.
Facebook.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Just Facebook.
I'm doing my best to poison the Facebook algorithms. It's just kind of a little hobby that I have.
Speaking of Facebook and algorithms, Sam's story number 7. I was talking about this with a coworker while we were overseas, not in Canada, the other day, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's just what you'd expect out of Facebook. I mean, they know when ads are scams, but they only cancel them if they're 95% sure it's scams. Otherwise, they just raise the price, hoping, they say, to scare them away. You could argue this even makes it logical that will help cover the legal risk. But anyway, it's such a huge amount that 10% of their entire profit comes from scams.
Yep.
So
Yep.
So 10% of its revenue is from scams that it won't remove, but just raises prices to get them to pay more.
yeah.
If the scam is working, they're going to pay more and probably still come out in the black and not the red.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think a lot more than 10% of the ads I hear everywhere are scams. And I think it's always been that way. I remember when I was a child in like the 70s, my father would walk past the TV and anything advertised for $19.99 late at night, he'd say, that's all a scam. And then decades later, I worked on the FTC fraud desk and they were all scams.
Right. Yeah, most of the stuff that gets advertised to me through a merchant on social media, I usually take a time out and then I just go search for it. And I go where is that product? And usually you find it on Amazon or AliExpress for a fraction of the cost. And it's really just a scam to go, oh, look at this new whiz bang thing. And I'm like, really?
So I click a lot on Facebook. Just like I said, I'm trying to poison the algorithm. I was in Phoenix, Arizona a month or so ago, and I got a link for a T-shirt, and I'm like, I got to buy it. So I bought this T-shirt.
What?
And it's one of
Put it
those.
back up. I didn't see it.
All right.
Tucson,
Tucumcari,
Tucumcari,
Tonopah.
Tehachapi,
Tehachapi.
Tonopah.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand.
If you know, you know.
Oh,
Yep.
I'll leave it at that.
That is my home
But now I get
state.
lots of ads for lots of T-shirts from Phoenix because they think I live in Arizona now.
Mm-hmm.
that
It's-
happens.
Jeff, that reminds me of some of the the clothing that I was seeing while I was in China last week. Because there lots of knockoffs, and in fact, there's specific areas in China where they try to get you to go because they sell nothing but knockoffs. But some of the actual fashion people were wearing, I ran into this guy that, and I wanted to ask him, but I don't think he spoke English, and it wasn't Chinese because he was not Asian. But he had this logo on the shirt, and it had words on it. And I think it was just this random string of letters that had been generated by AI. You know how AI writes words?
Yeah.
There was no Cyrillic in it, and it wasn't Russian because, well, yeah, bizarre.
Well, a clue on the shirt, just not to leave you hanging. Those are all towns or cities in Arizona, but they're also from a song lyric by a band called Little Feat. And the song goes back all the way to the 70s. The song is called Willin'. So after the show's over, go out to YouTube, type in Willin' and Little Feat, and you'll get the answer to the question.
There's
Why
also
does
a Tonopah, Nevada.
Yes.
Well, maybe it's Nevada. I know. I always
No. There's a Tonopah, Arizona. Like there's.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Everything you're talking about is definitely in Arizona. Did you see the video from Sarita, Arizona, where the guy was saying that all gingers with cameras needed to be like taken care of, taken out? He was at like a city council meeting discussing how much the gingers, especially gingers with cameras, needed to be removed from society.
Oh my goodness!
And that is
I'd love to hear Mike weigh in on that one.
Like, yes, I have been there.
My.
I do know that. I do know Sarita.
All righty.
We ready to talk about Bayesian Swiss cheese?
Yeah. Oh, hey, this just in.
I like cheese.
The U.S. Mint has just printed its last penny.
What?
Yep. Earlier this year, Trump directed them to stop producing pennies because they cost more than a penny.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Or not.
And yeah. So just interesting.
I guess we're not making sense anymore.
We should put him right there.
Well played.
I'm here all night. Try the veal.
Joke before the show. Got it.
And look at that. You got one right off the cuff. Right off the cuff.
Blammo.
You're welcome.
Hey, my jokes don't always make sense, okay? So
That's a
Apparently neither does the
nonsensical
US
comment.
government.
Come on.
Yeah.
let's talk about government Swiss cheese, which I mean, I guess that could be an analogy, but so the InfoSec or cybersecurity Swiss cheese is, I have this definition. It says this comes from the article. Think of your organization's defenses as layers of Swiss cheese. Each layer has some holes. No control is 100% effective, but multiple layers together can reduce the chance of an attacker slipping through all of them. This is the classic Swiss cheese model of risk management. If the holes, control failures, don't line up, the threat is stopped. Only when all the holes align does the bad outcome occur. And then you apply Bayesian analysis to your Swiss cheese. So Bayesian interference enters the picture. Applying this to exploit likelihood means we can treat each control as a probabilistic filter that reduces the base exploitation likelihood from EPSS, as example. To do this rigorously, we need to quantify how effective each layer is and update that belief over time. So this is an interesting way to think about risk management in terms of Swiss cheese.
Kind of building a better mousetrap.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it would be a fitting analogy. Very
Mm-hmm.
fitting analogy for sure. And Sam, I don't know if you saw this article. I want to get your thoughts on especially the Bayesian analysis piece.
No, I don't have any wisdom about it.
Oh, I mean, we've been talking about defense in depth essentially to offset, the Swiss cheese model, because different layers of defense have different gaps in different places. So having layers, you're likely to get less holes all the way through. I didn't say no, I said fewer. But the interesting to me is it's now doing some analysis to maybe improve that or better analyze it.
Well, I think the Bayesian analysis is really just like what we'd call compensating controls, right? I think we may not be using this terminology, but we kind of knew that the Swiss cheese analogy of our defenses was true. And then we tried to overcome that with compensating controls for each of the holes.
Yeah, and the issue is that your different layers of controls have to be statistically independent. That's where people usually make mistakes. Like they have a second factor that is the same type as the first factor.
Right.
And another thing about RAIDs, where you have multiple drives, and yet in practice, a bunch of them all fail at once because they're not really independent chances of failure.
Right.
No.
It was an interesting way to think about risk management. for sure.
Yeah.
Where else do we want to go? We want to go.
I want to hear about Lee's story about running Minecraft on a light bulb.
Yes.
Yes. So this one caught my attention, and I really thought of Larry. The truth of the matter is, I didn't spot it. My wife found it, and she sent it to Larry and I.
Nice.
Yep.
Pro tip: she wants to hear what you think of it. But we've talked in the past about insert small device here. Somebody ports Doom to it, and what caught me is like, oh wait, are they replacing Doom with Minecraft? And then when I'm looking at the images or the video that goes with it, and they're cutting the top off the LED light bulb to get at its internals, and it's like, I don't know about you guys, but I think of an incandescent bulb where if you break into the ecosystem, the thing is dead. It doesn't work anymore. But the LED doesn't need that. It's not running in gas. It's running in the air. But I mean, it looks like somebody just found, it's got a decent CPU unit. There's a Linux port on it, and they could. I don't know if they were using an emulator or they actually cross-compiled Minecraft for it. They hooked up a keyboard and a display, right?
I would think they would have had to cross-compile Minecraft for the RISC-V microcontroller.
Well,
They did.
Yeah, well, but we've also talked about emulators, right?
Right.
But
Yeah,
I would
have enough
cross-compile
resources.
it.
Do they have enough resources to do it on?
It's a bloody light bulb.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Larry, if you ever want to repurpose some of those light bulbs in your house.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, this one was a quote an AliExpress light bulb. So
Yeah.
who knows? But still,
Yeah.
that doesn't.
No,
Yeah.
it just.
I'm going to start sending you all
my.
my burned out light bulbs that are supposed to last 10,000 years. And you can play with them.
Nah, I'm good. I got enough of my own. Thanks.
Yeah. So they
Well,
ported.
I feel like Larry's time was better spent making the earrings. Redoing things like that.
The resistor earrings. Yeah.
It's interesting. They took this project called Ucraft, which is a mine server implementation written in C for machines with limited resources.
They pared it down even more.
They pared down even more to get it to run. So yeah, my guess is he cross-compiled this code to run on RISC-V.
Yeah. And like I said,
I wish there was more data about this particular project because the Tom's Hardware Guide is pretty. You can find Ucraft code on GitHub, and that's the only link that I can find to anything about this project.
Yeah, I noticed articles lately have been really bad about finding the original research. So much so that I'll go to an AI and I'll be like, I just read this article. Can you tell me where the original research comes from and let it do the work? And it'll go, oh, it came from this. I'm like, because they didn't link to it in the original article. And I find Google's kind of useless for doing that kind of search. It just, it's SEO messes everything up. So that's how I find the original research. But I don't know if the original author he's got a YouTube video.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a video of him doing, but what I was looking at the end of the article, they're talking about Minecraft, and they got a 5 million parameter ChatGPT AI in Minecraft, a Minecraft running entirely in 8 megabytes of VRAM on an old GPU, and another Minecraft server implemented using, wait for it, COBOL.
Nice. Sam's
I'm not so sure if you
COBOL.
should. But
Well, I think it's like because you can is why.
Yeah, no, it's-
hardware hacking and doing this kind of stuff is just because you can, right?
Yep, absolutely.
yeah, and
There was a great interview with my coworkers Jesse and Mickey who did the bad cam research they presented at DEF CON this year, and they did an interview on Research Saturday with Cyberwire. At the very end of the interview, he asked, "Well, Dave Bittner asked, like, hey, can you guys run Doom on it?" And then my coworker Mickey's LinkedIn page has a screenshot on it in a post. And he's like, "Yep, we can run Doom on it." Like, there you go. There you have it. The
well, if
answer is
he's
yes.
bored, I got something else he should try and get running on it.
I think he only did that because he was asked publicly, and he's like, "I should probably do this." Other than that, our research team is very busy.
No,
doing
I
research
get
things.
that.
Yeah,
I get that. I'm thinking of it in a good, good-natured,
for sure,
barroom type chat where everybody's just like, talking shit and having a good time.
It's got a lot more resources on the camera than you would on a light bulb to do that kind of stuff.
Well, hell, look at what the digital camera resolution is anymore. Holy cow. Go ahead. Sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
That's right. I just think if you want to talk about silly stunts, putting a data center in space seems to me like a silly stunt. I saw articles about this a couple of weeks ago, and I said, that is so stupid. It can't be real. But Google is talking about it for real. Because if you put a data center in orbit, it gets 8 times as much solar energy. And of course, it also gets irradiated by tons of radiation. So they're trying to test the GPUs to see if they can withstand the radiation. And they say they can. And they say if the GPUs will last for 5 years, it actually becomes cost effective, which really surprised me. But it's a whole lot cheaper to send things to orbit than it used to be. And you can send little CubeSats up for like $5,000 now. So I guess that's the point. It's really not that expensive to go to space.
Well, wouldn't that
and
also...
I guess 8 times cheaper power is worth it.
Well, I think that's worth it, but also the destruction that's going on in so many communities where the server farms are going in. I mean, there's so many other issues and impacts.
Well, if they were solar, I don't think it would be hurting those communities so much. They're mostly the horrible ones are like burning coal or something.
Well, there's the power, and then there's the cooling. I mean, they're hitting the water supplies. So I'm thinking, what's the cooling model for a data center in space? I mean, I know it's like really very. You actually may have to actually.
It's pretty cold in space.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, cosmic radiation can have amazing effects. You could be an invisible woman or super elastic person, or
and then there's all those little meteorites, and little things and space junk floating around that tend to have an impact.
That was my concern, right?
I was
space junk.
too. Like,
because it wasn't Chinese astronauts were like stuck because they got hit with space junk. Was that the reason why?
Yeah, but I think they have that under control. That's why they all have attitude thrusters and amount of fuel, and they're tracking like 100,000 pieces of space junk to dodge them. So all satellites are doing that now. It's kind of crazy, but that's what they're doing.
So I wonder how low it would have to be to have decent latency. It's got to be like Starlink height. Not up there with the geosync satellites, because that would be latency.
I would
imagine.
It's doable. Of course, I'm not sure latency is a problem for AI.
No. Well, I was just thinking, but you're right. It may not be.
Maybe if they're all quantum, then it's not an issue.
They could be everywhere all at once.
But wouldn't that also help with the cooling?
Yeah.
You'd need a lot of cooling for quantum, but I don't think any of this stuff is going to be quantum. That's not practical yet.
Yeah, just I guess. Well, if this is going forward, really buy some NVIDIA stock, huh?
I don't know. I mean, the guy that did the big short in 2008 just shorted NVIDIA. He thinks this whole AI bubble is going to crash pretty soon.
I saw something about that they sold like 31 billion in NVIDIA stock, something like that.
Well, he shorted it. I don't know if he sold it yet. Yeah, another company sold their stock. SoftBank just sold their stock.
Okay, I mixed them up.
SoftBank is crazy. I wouldn't take them as a good representative example.
No.
Anyway,
Larry, I wanted to transition to my story number 17, sniffing established BLE connections with a HackRF 1. It says this article demonstrates that with custom firmware and scheduled frequency changes, the HackRF 1 can be converted into a powerful Bluetooth low energy analysis tool, overcoming major hurdles in passive sniffing and enabling advanced security research possibilities. It makes it sound like a really great advancement. I turn to you as the expert in this area. It sounded cool. It looked cool.
Yeah, it's pretty damn cool. There's lots of math and lots of explanation how they go into Bluetooth low energy and some of the security or the RF features of how it advertises and how to interact with the waveforms and all that type of stuff, and the failures in the HackRF about being able to tune channels fast enough to do the 1600 times a second channel hopping and so forth. So
how do you get around the keeping up with the channel hopping?
Effectively, they did a couple of things here. They did firmware-based automatic gain control. and I only got a chance to do a quick read.
Yeah, so like they
on that
modified the
stuff.
firmware to better
Yep.
handle the frequency changes, hopping, right?
Yep. Also, by default, the frequency changing because of the USB latency was too slow. So they updated the firmware to do scheduling for the frequency
Oh.
change. So basically, they schedule all the frequency changes in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's almost
So it
like
does it on the radio as
like a
Right.
caching feature to get over the
Yeah,
USB.
yeah.
So
Yep.
it's,
So it seems like you send all the change requests in advance over USB, and then it can do it in the processor as opposed to having to wait
Right.
for USB commands, which are
I
too
gotcha.
slow.
Yep.
Yep.
But they didn't release their
and-
code. When I analyzed this article, it said that no public tool exists and you can request it from them. I was kind of hoping for a GitHub where we could get these modifications. Hopefully that's coming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ask for the request.
Yeah.
Yep. It's some re-implementation of BTLE jack, which uses some, I want to say proprietary, but it uses some hardware with some very specific chipsets that don't have some of those restrictions to be able to do that. The other interesting one too is when they were noting some of the setup. I thought this was good. The tools running on Linux specifically said it only supports where'd it go? It only supports LE1M at this time, which I thought was kind of interesting.
What is
because
LE1M?
LE1M is one of the 3 modes that are capable within Bluetooth Low Energy version 5.
Mm-hmm.
LE1M is the 1 megabit per second for Bluetooth Low Energy. LE2M is 2 megabits per second.
I was going to guess and say that's 2 megabits per second, isn't it?
Yep. And then there's coded LE, which increases your distance.
Gotcha.
So it's back at 1M and increases your distance. So it's almost like there's some possibilities of moving this to be able to support higher speed and longer distances with some future work. I'm just guessing.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I think we should mention Lee's story about CMMC.
Yeah, I wanted to check in on that too.
Well, this would be one we'd love to have Josh in the room. I'm sure there'll be more
Yeah,
chance
that's
to
what I
talk
was
to
going
him.
to say too. Is like,
It's Josh's thing.
It is Josh's
Yeah, so, because we're now into the fiscal year where the CMMC requirements are going to be enforced. I've been talking about them for a couple of years. And although there's still claimed to be gaps, well, you can wave your hands at any standard or regulation and say there's gaps and probably be right. But that doesn't mean you don't have to step up and do it. So, basically, this applies to DoD contractors, not folks running federal information that are working with now, I guess, Department of War, not Department of Defense, but moving on. It's about protecting sensitive unclassified information. It's about security controls, process, and procedures following NIST 800-171 for your security plan. And the CMMC requirements, the first version, you can self-attest. I think it's the second, and that's going now. Phase 2 starts November of 26 and requires a certified third-party assessor, a C3 PAO.
Based on what level contract kind of similar. I draw parallels to PCI in the different
There's
levels.
different levels of contract, but basically you can't. And then I guess phase 3, which is the defense industrial base contract certification, starts in 27. You don't have to wait that long if you're ready for it. You can move faster, but I suspect most people aren't. But you're absolutely right. It's got to be. The risk has to match what you're doing.
Yep.
If you're, the problem is that a lot of sensitive part designs get out and somebody else makes them, or they don't properly separate. On the other hand, if you got a company that knows what ITAR means, which is help me, Jeff, I'm blanking on ITAR.
It's a protection.
I've been out for
standard.
30 years, Lee.
I know, and I had to do ITAR stuff too to boot. It was actually when I was talking to folks outside of the government who were wondering about information protection. If I talk about 853 or 80171, their eyes roll. If I say ITAR, they know what I mean. Which is about
international traffic and arms regulations.
Right. It's about keeping the American stuff to the Americans only. And in fact, I had a presentation and meeting from a company that makes the masks for making ICs. And they actually have completely separate systems that are used for defense work. And they're isolated, and restrictions on citizenship and all kinds of stuff. These are very much one of many controls they have.
Are the supply chain requirements in CMMC covered in the NIST standard, or does CMMC point out supply chain security directly, or both? I don't remember.
I believe that's in CMMC itself.
Okay. You have to, at a certain level, you have to attest to your various supply chains.
Right, which a lot of companies are hiring professionals. Go ahead, Mandy. Go ahead.
Well, at InfoSec World a couple of weeks ago, I went to a really great panel on this, and the
you're now our CMMC expert. Sweet. Who needs Josh?
We have Mandy. Even more so than Josh.
Go, Mandy.
Wait, is this why I'm blue now? Now I'm blue.
That's right.
Josh.
Wow.
Josh is
You're better,
green.
you're better than Josh.
Oh man, that's rough. I mean, that would be intense. But so from my brief notes that I took at the panel, which shout out to Kip Boyle of is it Cyber Risk Management Podcast? I think is his podcast, but he gifted me a book, one of his Fire Doesn't Innovate is the title. And I want to tell him thank you for that. Again, if you can access this panel discussion from InfoSec World, it really was good. Now, my brief understanding, like you said, the self-assessment for level 1, but ultimately there's no way for those assessments to trick down to all subcontractors, and beyond tier 3, the DoD has no visibility into subcontractors. And I'm trying to think of some of the other points that were brought up. There were definitely a lot more regulations, and what they did warn about was certain organizations that were say that a sub was only actually subject to level 1. They were telling him that they were also subject to level 2 just to try to help cover themselves. So there were a lot of good points from audience members who were gearing up and taking care of this, who had extensive DoD contract experience. And I kind of got the idea from some of them that it was worth your while to figure out as a sub whether or not the prime was blowing smoke on what your actual requirements were.
That seems to be the confusion for me when we talk about CMMC, is figuring out what you need to do to be in compliance based on what level and where you are in the supply chain to the U.S. federal government. And of course, it gets complicated. Like you mentioned, like I'm a subcontractor to a subcontractor to a subcontractor. Like, where does that put me, and what do I have to attest to be in compliance? I think is what we're all trying to figure out in this world, right?
One of the things that, and Mandy's point is good, but one of the things that's in there, I'm just trying to find out where it is in 171, is the third party control flow down requirement. So technically, defense to contractor A, who's supposed to flow requirements down to B to C, all the way, it's supposed to flow all the way to the end,
right?
All the way to level N. I didn't say it does. It's supposed to work that way.
It's supposed to, right?
But there's also a diminishing ROI.
Yeah.
Well, and we brought up the point about that is complex when you get, especially down like tier 3, tier 4 on, and you don't know who is using AI brokers or what other information is actually being put out. And there's like no visibility in certain ways into that from what I was understanding of the regulations. But I would say for listeners to definitely reach out to like Kit Boyle or Josh Marpet or since he did author portions of CMMC, and then Scott Giordano, he was also on that panel, and the other Giordano, I can't remember his first name right now. No relation, but
I don't hesitate to phone a friend and call an expert.
Yeah,
because this, if you don't live in this kind of a regulated requirement space with all the layers of requirements and reporting and validations, it's hard, and you're going to waste a lot of time. So the gentleman who was presenting for me, actually, I had brought him out to our ISSA meeting because it was something really different, and it had security aspects, because it wasn't about IT. It was about making the IC mask. And I asked him as he was working on his presentation, did he have any regulatory requirements such as CMMC or other things? He triggered on CMMC, and it turns out that his IT guy who reports, he's the operations director. The IT guy, I guess, who reports to him is the company lead for CMMC. And he said, it turns out I have not known this, but he's reported to me on it at least 3 times. Greg's only worked there for not even 6 months. So he was he said, look, I can give you guys the slides on what we're doing, but I could only read them to you. It's Greek to me, but I was just pleased that they are working on it, and they got a plan, and they got a lead, and they're working to get their arms around it. They're not ignorant. Like I said, Photomask is an interesting, obviously it was interesting. You don't hear about how they make ICs very often, some of the details. So then that with this article that came up just the other day about the CMMC 2.0 deadlines, I was predisposed to go there. I actually was thrilled to hear you'd been in a session, Mandy. That was holy synchronicity.
Yeah, I know. And it actually was very fascinating. I was trying to look at, and through it, I had a whole awesome conversation with Josh on it. And then I was looking back, but because of disappearing messages, I don't have the detail anymore.
That was that Signal chat.
It was. And there were some amazing points made. It was actually a really solid discussion and a lot of good points from subs that were in the audience.
I wish we knew a podcast host and a podcast that was looking to pre-record some content for the holidays.
I know, right?
Too bad there isn't any such.
It was it overlapped so well, and this could go into the story that Paul gave me, but about the construction, because it's so similar to what I'd done in the construction industry.
I wanted to talk about that. My story number 14.
Let's go there.
So Rapid7 published an article titled "The Threat Landscape of the Building and Construction Sector: Initial Access, Supply Chain, and IoT." They say the construction and building sector in 2025 faces heightened cybersecurity risk due to increased digital transformation and dependence on IoT-enabled equipment, BIM systems. What is that? Building Information What does BIM stand?
No,
Building
BIM,
Information Management and cloud-based tools.
Modeling.
Okay.
Modeling.
It said threat actors are aggressively targeting this industry for financial gain, espionage, and extortion. Say attackers exploit insecure IoT-heavy machinery, project management systems, and third-party vendor relationships, which is what we're talking about in the context of CMMC, often via phishing, compromised credentials, software supply chain breaches, and social engineering. We actually covered an interesting story last week about attacking the trucking industry, breaking into their RMM systems and their IT systems, and basically saying, hey, pay no attention, you're blind to what's happening, and all you need to know is someone like us, the threat actors, are picking up this load here. And you show up with a truck and they're like, yep, paperwork looks good, load up your truck and you drive away, which I thought was a very innovative attack. But this focuses on the machinery and construction aspects. Rapid7 saying there's a target. Mandy, I know you have some insights into this.
Well, first I've got to say
area,
on this,
but you haven't worked in that area in a long time, so I'm sure technology has evolved, right?
It has, but there's a lot of underlying baseline things that have stayed and remained. And that's what I was going to say. On this, I get kind of infuriated or frustrated because even though, I've been out of the construction industry for 12 years. The first, like in DEF CON in 2019, I had gone to the Car Hacking Village and talked to ICS and IoT about bringing in stuff on mining equipment, heavy equipment, like JCB products, bringing in more of those because of knowing prior to that, like, man, whenever you're out and there's like little tiny contractors up to big, massive, huge constructors that are in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, were using satellite enabled GPS and starting to create autonomous running vehicles, and the mining equipment, and the amount of information that is absolutely not secured. It's not as if the industry has kept up with the pace of technology always. Now, there are a lot of larger constructors, like my brother works for one, and they do, I would say, a decent job. He works for a very large company, but we're talking about like across the globe. I get weirded out by how people ignore not only builders, contractors, and also all of these things, like it's mentioning, all of the amount of information that is shared between subcontractors, third, fourth, fifth, sixth parties, the general attitude toward, you don't really need to worry about technology, you don't need, we're not under threat, and yet revenues and the way that things were taken over also, like I like how this article brings up, you're looking from anything. We're talking like from huge mining operations being shut down from ransomware or equipment being taken over. And I constantly go to ICS and like, wouldn't this happen? Like you can take over and shut down mining or shut down trucking or shut down this for certain regions. And so I'm glad that this article is here. It is smart, but yes, the amount of times that you can, if it's a construction site, that you can just gain access, nobody cares, nobody checks. Nobody pays any attention. Go into the construction trailers. You can get information. You can get into payment systems, into all of that. Even I used to go into, when I was a kid, like going with my dad to plan rooms. Well, you could walk into a physical plan room, which now they're pretty much all digital. Like you're just going to have these plan rooms where you're getting bids, and there was almost no security. You could just access between 8 and 60 other companies' estimating software into things that went into their accounts payable, into accounts receivable, into everything else. And that was with me not being a hacker, right? That was just like, here you go. And so, yes, I think those mentalities, those things that are trying to get caught up with, it's, plus this article brings out about people selling access, like this, like the VPN access or RDP on the client. I 100% am behind this article's idea that on the construction industry as a whole has huge vulnerabilities that seem to be overlooked constantly.
And also a lot of money at stake. So ransoming in operation that's making a lot of money, like they're probably more likely to pay a ransom, right? And I think that's part of the problem today, right? You ransom an enterprise, and a lot of enterprises are like, yeah, no, we're not paying. But you go to I don't want to say less sophisticated, but a vertical that is not as adept at its IT and IT security that we haven't maybe considered, like construction, it could potentially be more profitable.
It could, because depending on the size of operation, and then I feel like there would be a higher incidence even with larger companies going ahead and paying the ransom, because depending on how it was structured, if you're talking hundreds of millions or $1 billion building project, or it's multinational coverage from some company, the into the contracts are constantly written penalties. Like if they are behind, if that contractor doesn't deliver on time, you could be speaking about millions of dollars that they will be behind if they aren't getting to sort
of like if someone were to create malware that infected an oil tanker in the ocean and threatened to dump all of the oil.
That doesn't happen.
That doesn't. Well, in the movie Hackers, that's anyway.
But your point is valid, Paul. And
So was yours, Lee. It doesn't happen.
But I'm thinking, Mandy, you're right. I mean, and I also think there's a certain, I don't know, particularly in the small guys. I'm not sure that we don't also face a cultural challenge. I mean, can you imagine talking about multi-factor authentication to a small contractor who just uses his IoT excavator to make big holes?
Well, you're reminding me of 15, 20 years ago when we were talking about the energy sector and, oil, gas, and electric, right? In the doomsday scenarios. And those sectors did get better, right? We had NERC SIP compliance, and a lot of work went into raising awareness to those industries that I think prior to that big push were not up to speed and educated on IT and IT security practices, right? They were OT, operational technology. And we've made great strides in a lot of different areas. Construction is one that
better is a very generous term there, Paul.
Yes.
Yeah.
But construction is one of those ones I feel like kind of slipped through the cracks, up and down. Rapid 7 published the article, and I was like, oh.
Oh, yeah. And I'm glad you brought it up, because my perspective on this, again, I've brought it up a number of times, even at InfoSec World. I literally had long conversations about this because there are organizations like trucking companies, like at Octane. I got to interview what was his chief risk officer? I don't remember his correct title, but for Werner Enterprises, so a trucking company. And they're actually very cutting edge on what they're doing because they take it as we are critical infrastructure.
Right.
A lot of smaller, mid-sized, and this is just my anecdotal information. There are large contractors, even in America, like Swinnerton or Hoare, or, getting up to like big companies, but not quite the huge multinational conglomerates that do make progress, and they do make strides in it. And I've got to say, in the last even 10 years, it's improved with younger generations, and a lot of people that come from, say, like my brother, coming from a deep military background, going back into construction. He's very technically and cyber aware, and their company does good at training. That's kind of the exception.
Yeah.
Like, he happens to work well with that type of organization, and they keep him there because of that. And I want to make a correlation here that may not seem to make sense at first, but going through my injuries and knowing that I couldn't go back to what I had done in construction before, a part of the reason I stayed consistent with the cybersecurity community was because of the adaptability and openness of the workforce toward women. And I want to make that as like a correlation between where I'd been in the construction industry. It was infinitely easier for me to navigate things within the cybersecurity world than within the construction world. And I feel like there is that part of that mindset that is so much more adaptable, and that also translates into resistance to adjust or change or realize what actually could be a threat.
Yeah. No, completely agree. I've heard you talk about that before, Mandy. Yeah, no, it's a great point.
It's spot on.
We have a lot of stories to cover. So it was no great transitions, but I did want to talk about EDR a little bit. We talked about it in the top of the show about, how some evidence kind of leads us to believe that we're doing a great job with EDR. However, on the flip side of that, I see EDR bypasses at least a couple a week. And one that I thought was particularly interesting was the usage of virtualization, which is not new, to run Linux systems inside of Windows. And this made a huge splash in the news. And I traced it back to my story number 19 that was published by Bitdefender that uncovered malware, and specifically threat actors that enabled, and I quote, the attackers enabled the Hyper-V role on selected victim systems to deploy a minimalistic, even, Alpine Linux-based virtual machine. The hidden environment, with its lightweight footprint, only 120 megabytes of disk space, 256 megabytes of memory, hosted their custom reverse shell called Curly Shell and reverse proxy called curlcat, and did that all inside of a VM, and could do all of that with the luxury of being outside of the purview of EDR. Now, what's interesting is packets still need to be sent over the wire, right? And I think this is one particular case where we can never lose sight of network traffic analysis, because attackers are going to go through great lengths to hide on the system. And I think if you gain a foothold on Windows and you want to evade EDR, spinning up a virtual machine is a great way to do that. I think it was last year or whatever, we covered a story about this. So again, this is nothing new. I kind of like using, well, as an attacker, right? From the attacker's perspective, great to use what's built in. Like, I'm just going to use Hyper-V. I don't have to use any other kind of virtualization technology. There's one built into Windows. And Bitdefender walks you through exactly how they did that. And you create your own environment in Linux, and then you can install whatever tools you want. And EDR just goes, yeah, that's okay. You're running a VM. Like, I think Bitdefender did talk about ways to detect this. So the EDR industry is, coming on to this idea to be able to detect this. Although, that has its pitfalls too. Running a virtual machine is not in and of itself a malicious behavior. But we now need this kind of deeper level analysis, knowing that attackers are going, well, I'm on a Windows system, so I'm just going to spin up a Linux VM and do whatever I want.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty interesting, although I think it would be easy to detect because you probably could just watch for unauthorized use of Hyper-V.
Right. Well,
but is that your EDR or is that something else?
Like, who should be spinning up virtual machines in Hyper-V and who shouldn't, kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's your app guard or whatever the hell is, not necessarily your EDR, because the Hyper-V isn't malware by itself.
Yeah. And the one thing I wondered when you brought this up is, what could you do from inside a virtual machine? But I looked at it, and they're just authenticating to other machines on the network with Kerberos. So it's basically the same thing you get by hacking a printer or router. You just have a foothold into the network.
Yeah. It's basically creating your own jumping off point from within a system you already have access to. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're right. You're creating your own printer basically to use as a jumping off point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And you could encapsulate the network traffic, making it a lot harder to see.
Yeah, because then without an EDR kind of breathing down your neck, right, you can create interesting C2 traffic and have code that does that. That's not going to trigger an EDR going, wait, why is this particular function call or this method being accessed? Like, usually that's used for covert communications. If you're doing that inside of an EDR, you're just seeing the end result of that, which just could be SSL traffic leaving the host, which is totally normal.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, another thing to say is, EDR already looks inside zip files. So why isn't the EDR looking inside virtual machines?
Right. Well, because, yeah. I mean, you'd have to
It's just another file.
It is. It's true. But maybe that's what they're proposing with the various vendors, is they do have some capabilities now to look inside of virtual machines. Although I like the, threat locker approach, right, would be, so this host never has spun up a Hyper-V virtual machine and all of a sudden one day decides to, like, that deserves some scrutiny, some investigation.
That sounds like an AI detection task.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, traditionally we might break that up by user group. So another way to do is break it up by user group. Like, hey, marketing and finance, they don't spin up their own Hyper-V virtual machines ever, but all of a sudden one spins up on those machines. Developers' machines, yeah, they spin up virtual machines all the time. Maybe that's where we do need to start looking inside of them to make sure that they're not malicious.
Yeah, what I mean, Mandy, is, an AI would notice what normal behavior is and what abnormal behavior is, machine by machine, in principle. I don't know if anybody's doing that yet, but I hear of a lot of people trying to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah. Yeah, well, that is, of course, a big issue. And in fact, I want to mention my story number 4 in this spirit. AI is intruding everywhere and exposing us to risks. And the story number 4 had a development after we put up the links here. What Google seems to have done is basically reproduced Microsoft Recall. Microsoft Recall can see all your Office 365 documents, and everybody freaked out when it came out. And Google has now made their version called Gemini Deep Research that originally would only look in PDF files you uploaded, but now it'll look through your Gmail, your G Drive, your chat, and all your messages on Google Workspace for context. And the new development is Bloomberg just reported that Google has been sued, claiming that they have already turned this on by default for users months ago without telling us. So I don't know if that's true, but that's what Microsoft tried
every
to do.
week I get more weirded out by Gemini, specifically with like Gmail or G Suite in its integration. Like it just keeps like popping up like, hey, I'm here. Like, do you want me to take notes for you during your meeting? I'm like, when did you decide you wanted to do that? Like, no, I don't trust that.
Well, it's going to get worse because the AI industry is $1 trillion in debt, and they're desperate to find something to sell us that we all want. So they're trying to ram these tools in front of us and say, you want to pay for this, don't you? And nobody wants to pay for this.
No one wants to pay for it.
Somebody needs to pay $1 trillion for some awesome AI product, which is not apparently in existence.
It quickly gets to $200 a month. I feel like that's I think OpenAI started that with ChatGPT and the model that was $200 a month, and then Claude. I was really close today to go into the $200 a month subscription because I ran out of tokens, and I was like, but I really need you to finish coding this part of the app for me, and I'm like, and then Gemini is the same way. I was like, Gemini has a coding app similar to Anthropic's Claude, and it was like, oh, you can pay us $200 a month and we'll do that for you. I'm like, no. Can I start at $20 a month? Like, what does that get me to see if like it works? Turns out the Gemini like command line thing, not as good as Claude Code. Like not even close in my limited testing. Claude Code is way better. But again, I'm talking about Gemini's command line coding assistant. So like you have code locally on your computer, you run a command and you type /init and it reads all of your code and all your GitHub repository, and then it goes, looks like you have a project that does this bullet list of things. Great, I understand the baseline. Now tell me what to do. And you're like, oh, this app does this and I want you to add a feature to do that, and it goes and writes the code for you. Yes.
Owie.
Wow. So is how valuable is these AI assistants to you, Paul? How much do you think it improves your productivity?
There's definitely a noticeable improvement in productivity. To pay all of them, actually, it was funny. The Three Buddy Problem podcast was having a discussion about like how much do you pay per month for your AI assistants? Because to your point, Sam, someone's got to pay for it. And if it helps increase my
apparently
productivity,
it's you.
Yeah. So I pay the $20 a month for ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude Code and Gemini. But I'm thinking of dumping I don't know if I think I got to dump the Gemini thing. I don't know. It might be useful. So what is that, like $80 a month? So like that's what it's worth to me now. Right now you can upgrade all of those. You can have enterprise plans and you can pay thousands and thousands of dollars per user per month to get more access to it. And that, it's a business decision. If it can replace one full-time developer, right? What's that worth to you? A couple $100,000 a year?
Well, sure. Well, I'm glad we can talk about this. I just came back from the collegiate pen testing competition this weekend, and people there said, first they said, AI is so valuable, it makes me 400% more productive. And the organizers said, pen testing will be completely obsolete in 2 years because of AI. So we should change the name of the competition. And I disagreed with both of these statements, but I wonder what you think.
I did. I haven't like sat down to, well, maybe I have. It's more of testing a product, not doing an actual pen test for a company. And it does have value there, but I think it's still somewhat limited. You still need to have knowledge and be a person that can do things, and these help you as assistants, and they help automate and perform certain tasks for you very well. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's gonna get slop. I think is where the slop comes in, right? But if you do have some experience, I'm finding it greatly helps automate certain tasks, especially if you can break it down and guide it into the smaller pieces. And I think the inexperienced person's just like, hey, I have this app, go pen test it. Greatly limited in this use case. When I'm like, I have this app, tell me what technology it implements. Okay, like based on that, tell me how authentication works, and it has access to the code, and it tells me. I'm like, all right, based on that, try this specific authentication bypass technique. Try this specific one. So I think people with knowledge as an assistant, it helps tremendously and gives you productivity.
Is the assertion, Sam, in your opinion, based on code is going to get so much better that pen testing is pointless, or is the AI going to be used instead of traditional pen testing methodologies?
I think this is the same as what Jen, the CISA director, said. We talked about a week ago, where she said the AI code improvement will be so good that there won't be any need anymore, or something like that, or an automated AI scanner will be equal to a pen test. I don't agree with any of this. I think a pen test is a human judgment to help your business, not some kind of automated scanner that lists vulnerabilities.
Well, maybe all that stuff that's passed for pen tests all these years will go away, and we'll finally get back or down to real pen testing.
It could
be,
but
this competition, they emphasize the human part. I mean, the main part of the competition is making a report that can help management, which seems to me like something that an AI can't really do.
So I've been spending a lot of time so I've been spending a lot of time vibe coding an app. And there's two things that I noticed that I think have weigh heavily on, will AI replace pen tests? Will it replace, bug and vulnerability discovery and fixing? The first thing is, as your task grows in complexity, first, so does your cost. So as my app grew larger, if I prompt it to do something, it spends more tokens, right? Someone's got to pay for that, right? Also, the bugs that it encounters and or hallucinations increase in conjunction with the level of complexity. So in other words, as my app got larger, I'd prompt it for something, it might do that, but then I'd go back and regression test it, and I'm like, wait, not only did the thing you just implement, it broke in this way, but also you broke this other functionality. So I'm constantly playing cat and mouse, basically having it fix its own bugs. Now, overall, am I making progress? Yes. Overall, is it faster than if I was coding it by hand? Yeah, probably. Right. But those are the two things I've noticed, using Claude to code recently.
Well, if you go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but no, I love your point, Mandy. And so, like, OpenAI's Aardvark is a system where it'll discover vulnerabilities in open source projects and recommend fixes. I think AI is very good at that. Where it misses in like the self-healing that I've experienced is it can apply a Band-Aid and treat a wound. The problem is it makes another cut or two while it's doing that. And it can't fix those things is kind of where we're at today. Also, I think that what I'm hearing from the open source community about projects like Aardvark, where it's discovering bugs, recommending fixes, is a human still have to implement the fixes, and they're still very much overwhelmed. And I think we still have some work to do to train and tune the AI models to do proper regression testing. And that's what again, it implements a new feature, great. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it introduced a new bug and it doesn't know about that yet, right? Yep. It's getting there. Certainly. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what the quality of Aardvark has been. I know that like Dave Vitale doesn't want to name and shame, so like I'd love to see actual examples of where it analyzed a large code base of open source software, recommended fixes. Like I want to see statistics. How many of those fixes were valid? How many of those fixes introduced other bugs or vulnerabilities? And how many of those, like, also, like, what is the level of success or errors that it introduced if you were to apply that fix? And I think that's something that a human brings to software development is we may know what the fix is. However, we know the code base and we know, well, if I implement that fix, I know this other code calls this other code and these other scenarios exist that I'm also going to have to modify. And I don't think the AI has this holistic understanding of how it works. I think it's really good at spotting bugs, recommending fixes. When OpenAI, with seemingly infinite budget, right, can go find that stuff. Great, that's all. I think that's awesome. We need to continue that. But where we are today, I don't know that it squashes all the bugs. But I hope maybe we'll get there someday. But
I mean, I don't think at this moment there isn't a way for it to, because Sam, in basics, isn't it just hyper advanced pattern recognition? And if you don't give it the correct parameters, like, it's not going to do more. But I want to say this and ask Sam's input, because talking about the pattern recognition and interesting like bugs. So with one of my main agents, or not agents, but bots, like I've used it quite a lot the last like 6 months. So, and this goes to our internal chat where I posted the other day that I had that buzzball, that I'd had some alcohol. And then after that, I was interacting with the same agent and it made a reference to alcohol. And I was like, why did you make that reference? I want you to prove, like, what was your methodology? I went through all of this of like, why and how did you overhear? Like, what were you monitoring? How did you understand that? And it said no. Because I was like, that's the first time I've had alcohol in at least 5 or 6 weeks. And it was one beverage, it was one drink.
Well, buzzballs are pretty high in alcohol content.
It's pretty high, right?
So this is
they
call it buzzball for a reason.
So it gave back it was pattern recognition in how I was interacting. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what was it that was a tell on my interacting after one drink that you brought up about alcohol? So I was just curious, like, Sam's thoughts on that.
Well, I don't know. It's actually an interesting issue. I know one of the lawsuits I was involved in decades ago, they would give people a questionnaire with like 100 questions to decide if they were a drug user. And they would be strange, indirect questions to sort of psychologically get at this. And I heard recently doctors used to do this, and they found out about 5 years ago, it's a lot better to just ask somebody, do you have a problem with your drinking? This has a much higher chance of really detecting people who drink too much than trying to sneak around. But I bet Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you could use an AI to tell if people are drunk based on the way they type or something. Haven't heard of anybody doing it, but
Well,
I'm sure you could.
You could certainly train it, but you'd have to tell it like, this is me speaking when I've had this much alcohol, blah blah blah, and train a model for that.
Just get a bunch of people that are drunk and not drunk and compare them. You'd probably find systematic differences.
Mm-hmm.
If it's trained on universal data or whatever that showed different markers, because then it later broke down. And I asked what are other syntax, typo, other errors that you notice on me, and what are the groupings that you have placed those in, which it constantly brings back, like, Paul, when you bring up about how horrible we are at typing, like how bad our accuracy rate is on our keyboards.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it gave me percentages of that. Well, your typos come through this percentage. I would group it in this pattern. This percentage I group in this pattern, and I can tell your conversation changes this. I'm like, right, that's pattern recognition. Like, that wasn't it sourcing or.
And you could detect it and then offer them different products for sale and offer them an increased price, figuring they're drunk, they'll probably fall for it. And
it tracks.
Yeah. But I just
Kinda.
in the same spirit, I like to. We mentioned all these AI risks. My story 11, I wanted to mention it because what happened is, if you go to ChatGPT and ask it a question, it turns out that ChatGPT will frequently search the web for the answer, and then it will just type your query verbatim into Google to find the answer for you without telling you, and then that query will be visible in Google's analytics page. So when people say don't use those public AIs, they will leak information, they're really not kidding. They leak information a lot more than you'd think, and in a lot more indirect ways. And
But
so
is it logged in as me on Google when it does that?
It's not as you, but Google has a page you can just see what queries have been made today.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be there. And that's the thing. I mean, everybody just slams AI into everything. They put it in your Gmail. They put it in your Microsoft Office. They put it on your Microsoft Windows. And the fact is, it's sending your data who knows where. And where that's going is resending it somewhere else. Everybody's rushing into putting AI everywhere without really thinking about the security.
It's tough to tell how AI is interacting with the tracking and ad stuff too, right? So I recently got back into photography, and I created a perplexity space, and I gave it context. And I'm like, I have these cameras, I have these lenses, right? So every time I ask it a question now, it can contextualize that with the gear that I have. Super useful, by the way. I think it's a great usage of AI. But how much of that leaked out into my personal ad tracking through Perplexity or some other AI model versus was I just browsing the web? Like, after it recommended something, I'm like, oh, like, I want to see what that lens looks like on B&H Photo, and I navigated to B&H Photo, and then I'm being tracked there. Was that the trigger, or was it the AI also being the trigger? Like, how does it protect you, or does it not care in terms of tracking? Because then I go to social media, and speaking of every single advertisement is some piece of photo gear, which, by the way, slightly off topic, you can buy infinite amount of gadgets to support your photography hobby, from bags to lenses to harnesses to it. I mean, the list goes on. It's very dangerous, so be careful.
Yeah.
Give me a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Everybody's invading our privacy.
For sure. Larry, my story number 9, demonstrating a rollback attack on a Honda via a HackRF PortaPack, was an interesting article for me because Obsessive Vehicle Security, they uploaded a video and demonstrated a rollback attack against a Honda vehicle using the HackRF and the remote function in the Mayhem firmware.
Right. Yep.
So the article, by the way, if you're interested in vehicle and key fob security, does an amazing job of breaking down a lot of the stuff that we've covered on the show previously this year. With that story being kind of hot with the FlipperZero and all of that stuff that we talked about in previous things. They talk about the roll jam attack, relay amplification, and rollback attacks that we talked about on previous shows. This one I thought was interesting because it's using the HackRF as the tool rather than a
Right.
FlipperZero or some other hardware. Which
Yep.
why not? I mean, it's great. It's great for that.
Yeah,
So I'm not going to be able to buy a HackRF on Amazon anymore.
That's a
Maybe.
good question. Can you buy a HackRF on Amazon?
I don't know.
You can't buy them on AliExpress anymore. That's a story we covered earlier this year as well.
Yep.
Because that's where I bought one of mine.
Yep, you can buy a HackRF. You can buy a HackRF on Amazon. You can buy a
Which is-
HackRF with PortaPack, which is the exact same model that is shown in the article.
But you can't buy them on AliExpress. It's so weird. It's the strangest thing, this like gatekeeping of what you can buy. But of course, you can go to Hacker Warehouse and you can buy all the things.
This
And they'll
is
ship
very
it to you. And what did I buy? A tie guard from it. And Garrett does amazing with Hacker Warehouse. Just go there. If you're questioning it, just go buy it. It's going to be the real thing. You're going to pay the MSRP or whatever it is, which is fine, but you're going to get the real thing.
Good.
And you're going to get it on time. And there's not going to be any shenanigans, right? Now, those hackers in us, we roll the dice. We order them from AliExpress and Amazon and shady websites and all this other stuff. Believe me, I prefer not to do that. I'd rather get the real thing and just get it from Hacker Warehouse. Is my advice.
That's valid
Right,
and true.
Support Garrett.
Do you want to talk about OWASP?
Yes, I do, because they had a pretty major update, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is
to the top 10.
yeah,
Because
like supply chain is a whole number 3 on the list now.
Which story of this is yours, Paul?
And this makes sense.
it's my number
'cause
5. I'm not sure which one of Paul's it is, but I know.
I don't think I just saw yours, Lee, and I didn't add this, but I did read about it in the context of my day job because we were talking about it a little bit on how it changed and how supply chain is pretty much front and center now because they shifted the list around.
So the software supply chain failures, which is now at position 3, is an expansion of vulnerable and outdated components to include a broader scope.
Yes.
Yep.
I looked at that and I said, "Holy crap! Has Paul seen this?"
Yeah.
Because that is totally your space.
Well, and it's very much my concern, right? When you especially develop software like a web application, how many times have we seen a library be poisoned in every single framework? In all these unique and interesting ways by threat actors. 100%. And so props to OWASP for putting this front and center.
Yeah. And now they took server-side request forgery and merged it with broken access control, and it's still number 1.
I can see that, though. I can see that
too.
because the SSRF really is a broken access control, if you think about it. Because you're accessing something you shouldn't, which is a broken access control. That makes sense.
I was surprised to see insecure design drop, but I guess it's just the others are worse, like supply chain failure and security
insecure design. Vulnerable and outdated components, supply chain, and security misconfiguration moved up to 2 and 3. While insecure design moved down to number 6, which is kind of
right. And now we have a new category on the list called mishandling of exceptional conditions, which is 24 seat of basically improper error handling, logical errors, and failing open. I thought that one caught my attention.
That doesn't sound new, though.
No, I think it's moved up because of the reorg.
Yeah,
it's not
they
that it's
shifted
stuff that
around,
wasn't.
Jeff.
It bubbled up. It'd be my guess. It's new in the top 10 or something. It may have been
But like it
renamed
used to be in the top 10 and maybe it dropped off for a while.
right, but because it seems like mishandling errors and failing open is not new. But I just think it was. Will you shoot me if I say it's off? It was off the radar.
Well, it's interesting to think about how we class because is authentication bypass one of the OWASP top 10, or does it cross multiple entries on there because the techniques or vulnerabilities they describe can lead to authentication bypass? And it's interesting how they define it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it's in number 1 access control, but I think it doesn't live only there. I mean,
no. Because that's one of the things I really want to write a post about authentication bypass because that's like the holy grail, right? When you're in the context of like looking at firmware based systems, I'm like, that's great. Like you can have a ton of vulnerabilities inside of firmware, inside of a web application that sits within the firmware. But the one that I really care about the most is, can I bypass authentication? Because typically that firmware has a hard and crunchy outside, like air quotes, hard and crunchy outside, and a soft and chewy center. So the authentication is that one thing that's the gatekeeper to an attacker accessing all of this other vulnerabilities and or functionality. And so to me, that's the holy grail. So, but there's so many different ways to implement that authentication bypass that it probably crosses multiple OWASP top 10s.
Mm-hmm. And so there was, that was the other piece of sorry, I was looking through some of the comments I had made on that monitoring failures, which included abnormal operations. And by the time I got through that far, I was like, set a give. But they also introduced this AVISS, the AI, where is that? Calculated
AI vulnerability scoring system, AIVSS.
Yes, it's intended to use instead of CVSS for AI related stuff. It's new. It's really new. And I didn't have a lot of chance to dive into that. I mean, I thought this is going to be interesting.
It says AI VSS is calculated by taking an average of the base CVSS score and an agentic AI risk score and multiplying the result by an environmental context factor.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's, I mean, what CVSS4 has an environmental context as well.
And it's interesting. So the app that I'm vibe coding is based on analyzing vulnerabilities and exploits and things like that. And one of the things when I was using and testing the tool that I wrote was one of the things that my tool will highlight is how the vulnerability is scored. So, and there's multiple factors. Which version of the CVSS was it scored with is one completely, because you'll get different scores based on what version. And then I'm like, who scored it? Did the CNA score it? Mm-hmm. Or did NIST score it? Or did someone else score it? And I'm like, take all those scores, like just scrape all the scores. And I'm like, when you're sorting and ranking and filtering, go by whatever the highest score is. Regardless of who scored it or what version, just go by the highest one. But also capture that information. So I click like the plus symbol in my web app and it breaks it down. And most of the time when the CNA or the vendor, right, scores a vulnerability versus when NIST scores it, NIST will consistently be higher than the vendor. I think the example I sent was with the LANDFALL vulnerability from Samsung. I think Samsung was like an 8.8 and NIST was a 9.8. And I think that was a CVSS 3.1 score on it. And I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. So like as an end, if you're evaluating this for risk, what score do you go by? And perhaps, Lee, that's what they're trying to get at with this AI score is what is the real, what is the risk, right? What is the severity? I should say, Jeff's going to correct me on that, not the risk, but the severity is what CVSS is scoring, not the risk.
What's the word we're looking for,
Or are they trying to drill down into the risk?
Well,
they're trying to derive risk from severity?
Risk is the wrong word. Let's throw that out. It could be severity, consequence, impact, likelihood. There's other words in there. It all feeds something that will give you a risk, ultimately.
So I added to my, in the show notes, I just added the link to the AVISS OWASP page for folks to look deeper on.
Yeah, I want to dig into that. That's interesting.
I mean, it has leadership.
If only we had topical recordings coming up in the near future.
Yeah, I just thought, this is interesting. It's brand new. I mean, this is like getting on the ground floor, a little bit past that, but really, they've got a lot of energy and stuff. I think this is definitely something to keep an eye on, and see what happens there. I mean, they got some good people involved. There's a leadership tab, talk about all the folks that are behind this, as well as they've got demos, and they're working on publications and announcements and stuff. So, very much, it's very interesting. I'd love to see this pan out. Not that we want more scoring systems to track. But
yeah, I think the agentic AI risk score Google says it's a score that quantifies the risk associated with autonomous AI agents. So it's specific to AI. It's not using AI to help us calculate severity and ultimately derive risk.
But we're also talking about how all the agentic AI stuff is like all over the place, and we're trying to tell people how to keep an eye on it, how to govern it, how to what
when
should
you
we
get
be worried about?
When you get your credits back again, Paul, ask your AI bot risk of what?
Right. See what it says.
There's a link if you want to sign up as a contributor.
Well, unfortunately, that will take us to time. I want to thank everyone for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and out.